everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your sun in Virgo and Sagittarius rising. Both of these signs are mutable signs, so this can indicate someone who is capable of change. They're not someone that is necessarily going to dig in their heels all the time and be stuck in a rut or not like to do different things when the mood strikes them. It's interesting because I have uh, these two signs in my personal sun and moon. My sun is in Sagittarius and my moon is in Virgo, but I have Taurus rising, and I do have a certain tendency to do things very habitually or sometimes be stubborn about certain things in life. And so, even though I have a lot of mutable energy, I do have that tendency to be kind of um, constant in certain areas. And so, if you have a moon in either Aquarius, Scorpio, Taurus, or Leo, or even some inner planets, for Virgo, if you have inner planets in Leo or Scorpio, you may and what I mean by that is if you have, for instance, Venus or Mars in Scorpio or Leo, you might be more fixed. But you do have flexibility, so that's great. The other thing that these two signs represent is the intellect. Sagittarius rules the ninth house, which has to do with higher education, but even more than higher education, higher thought. So that can transcend academia. That can just be the philosophical system that you adhere to. The mind this is a mental house. The mind is active. And in Sagittarius, it's going to be at a more, I would call it a more sophisticated level, but that's not really accurate because Gemini, the third house, isn't, amateur hour. It's just a different way of approaching the ideas that people generate. But the ninth house is also the God house, so that could involve studying things of a spiritual nature. Virgo, your sun sign, is ruled by Mercury, and this is the ruler of both Gemini and Virgo. And Virgo is an earth sign, so the things that the Virgo person likes to learn or read about or even talk about tend to be of a practical nature. Even if you have this combination and you consider yourself a spiritual person, you probably will be the kind of person who wants whatever spiritual things that you talk about to also be applicable to everyday life. Virgo is a feminine sign because it's an earth sign. So I always say that the earth and the water signs, which are the feminine signs, the yin signs, tend to be more introverted. And the air and the fire tend to be more outwardly sociable in terms of new people, new circumstances. This is because that is what the feminine is more kind of internalized. So if somebody is an earth or a water sign, it doesn't mean that they just are a complete hermit, although Virgo is a hermit in the tarot, but it's that you might have your close circle of friends. I do think that Virgo, of all of the earth signs, does tend to branch out because of the rulership of Mercury. That tends to make you more interested in change, and change means that even the people that you associate with, you might like that variety. So that might not be entirely true for Virgo specifically in terms of the feminine signs. But in any case, if this was flipped and your rising sign was a Virgo and your sun sign was Sag, I would say that you might be shy because, again, speaking from experience, having the sun in Sag and Taurus rising and the moon in Virgo, I know that I am introverted, even though I'm a fire sign. The rising sign can really give a good hint to what a person's persona, how they act when they're with other people, the first impressions that they make. And so in this particular case, you may be the life of the party having Sagittarius rising. You might be quite expressive. But when people get to know you better, they might be surprised at how, serious you actually are, or wonky. In other words, that you have your pet topics that you nerd out on with that Virgo energy. Although Sag can sometimes be quite nerdy too, because Sag has that human side and the animal side, and the human side is very studious. So I don't want to just cast aspersions on Virgo, but you know what I mean. That bookworm type of quality is really prevalent in you, and so you might not want to be a party animal, but it's really that maybe this is something that you do um, because you feel obligated. Like if a friend invites you to a party and you feel like, I have to kind of make an appearance, and you can kind of yuck it up with people. And then you might leave. You might leave earlier than other people because you want to get your sleep, and a lot of Virgos are health nuts, and you don't want to stay out too late, and you're very fastidious about that in some cases. Maybe you're drinking kombucha at the party versus something that's full of more alcohol, or doing, maybe you just decide to bring a green smoothie. I don't know. But in any case, um, Sagittarius, the Sag energy may be more prominent until your first Saturn return. This is how I feel about it. And there's other things I've read that seem to suggest that in other ways. And so, up until the time you're around 28 to 30, you may be more of that boisterous, rebellious energy. And then you settle down into your Virgo self. So, when you're younger, you might be resistant to anything that curtails your freedom. And so, maybe you travel. If you go to college, you might decide to study abroad because you're fascinated by other cultures and other countries. And then you kind of settle down into that very hardworking, in some cases, productive Virgo individual. Because both of these signs are connected to intellectual, um, they have that intellectual influence. You may decide, if you go to college, to major in education, whether it's elementary school or you're getting some kind of degrees so that you can teach at the college level. Doesn't really matter. There will be other indicators of that. Other things that really could be on point for this combination are, one of them could be a writer. And even if it's, I was saying earlier about not nonfiction stuff, things that are practical, that can have that tangible value, I guess you would call it. Even if it's a spiritual type of a book that you write, it might be how this helps you on a daily basis in some way. And if you are writing something that is fiction, you might write autobiographical fiction, or um, maybe it's even historical fiction. If your moon is in Virgo, then definitely you might be fascinated with certain time periods and want to write about those time periods. But I do think that if you major in something, I like, if you decide that you want to teach, you might want to teach English, because books have probably held a very sentimental place in your heart. Thinking about your childhood. I remember when I was a kid, I had these Nancy Drew. I had a Nancy Drew collection that would be quite impressive, and they were like, some of those books were like the old ones, the original ones, or the ones from the 50s. They kind of, to me, it kind of jumped the shark when it was like more of the modern version ones, because they didn't have the same kind of old timey language, lingo, the roadster, the I love all that kind of stuff. But then again, I'm from a different era, so if you're under the age of 30, you probably have no idea what the hell I'm talking about, even if you have read Nancy Drew. But anyway, so this is also a snarky combination. Anybody that has Sag and Virgo inner planets, inner points, has to cop to this. I would think. Sarcasm is big, and this can also extend to parodies, things that kind of mock or mimic other things that are real. Speaking of, talking about the past, I remember in the 70s being a kid, and Mad Magazine, I used to love that. Or even, I don't know how many people that grew up in the 70s remember Wacky Packages. I remember having those stickers, and they came with gum, and they would be spoofing actual products, and it was like in the early 70s, and it was really cool. But yeah, anything that is satire is just very appealing to both of these signs, because there's that irreverent quality where they're kind of mocking it, but it doesn't have to be mean spirited. It's just kind of spoofing on it. But there is sometimes this combination, because it really, the Virgo energy really hones in on small details, and so there can be this tendency to kind of pick out people's weaknesses. So you have to really be aware of the fact that you might, kind of cross the line sometimes, and make sure that what you're doing isn't really cruel or hurtful. Even if you wouldn't intend it to be so, it could come out that way anyhow. And so I think that the media is a natural for this combination. Again, Mercury does deal with the media. Um, and it's very interesting, because differentiating between Virgo and Gemini rules the third house of the media, but I honestly believe that Virgo is much more attuned to journalism than Gemini. Even though Gemini might be able to do it, I feel like Gemini might not, it might be sloppy with details. Gemini is very much on the cuff, and very good for like the roving reporter, if you will, but not, gathering that information as it appears, that kind of instantaneous thing. But I feel like Virgo is more fastidious when it comes to actual, putting things in print, making sure you have your facts straight. It's funny, when I was just talking about Gemini, if you ever want to watch something that is utterly absorbing, at least maybe it's just me, but since I have this configuration in different forms, maybe not exactly the same thing, but these two signs, I think some of you might find it interesting. Um, I try every November 22nd to watch things connected to JFK's assassination, even though I wasn't born until 2 years later. And one of the things that just totally, um, I'm totally obsessed by is the live coverage that occurred. And remember that in those days, they were not dealing with the kind of technology that we take for granted now. And so when they were relaying reports, they had to do so through the telephone, and they had somebody that was sitting there and just saying things as it happened, interviewing people on the spot. And it's they, there's at least two where they go on for hours just doing it in real time. And so this is kind of like what I associate with Gemini. With Virgo, it's about making sure that things are correct, making sure that all details pan out. So, with this combination, if you work in the media, you might have a um, real facile way of communicating in a way that people really like with the Sagittarius energy, but you also combine it with that attention to detail with Virgo. So that is very important, especially in this day and age where people can just live stream things, and it could be total crap. It could be, half truths. And so the more that we can respect um, facts, and of course, that has to be, taken with a grain of salt true too, because there is so much deception in the media as it is. So we don't know if we're getting fed lies or half truths anyway, by people who are supposed to be experts. So nobody can say, okay, this is a fact, but at least Virgo is going to make a good effort for that. So anything where you are, like if you have a blog, this might be a natural for somebody like a Virgo Sag individual, and you could even promote it in a way that really makes it take off. I think that this is a high strung combination. I think all mutable signs have a tendency to be high strung. So please, um, be mindful of that, because you might be one of those people who loves to take in information nonstop in all of your waking hours. I plead guilty to that myself. And we really need to um, counter that with being mindful of not being of not having a screen time, of honoring physical books, not always like staring at a screen, not always doing the technology at all, not always talking, having silence, having a reverence for silence, and also not doing. Both of these signs, being mutable signs, they may like to be in motion. They might like to, go here, go there, and just have that changeable um, scenery. But sometimes it's good to cultivate not only silence but stillness, and not needing that novelty, but just chilling and learning how to be still and know instead of having the mind chatter. There's a I think sometimes too it can be kind of a flaky vibe where the person is very scattered. Even as a Virgo, you may have ADD, um, and I'm talking about the Sag as well. And so that's why I'm saying practices like meditation that still the mind. I really believe that can help anybody who feels scattered to kind of anchor themselves. And being an earth sign, this can be something that you accomplish. It's just that, unlike Taurus or Capricorn, you don't have the fixed modality or the Saturn rulership to help you along with that anchoring the earth energy more. In terms of relationships, honor your need for intellectual compatibility and resonance. It's not that either of these signs needs an echo chamber. As a matter of fact, I think Sag loves to debate because there's just that love of kind of the the rebellious quality of kind of like taking an opposing position, especially, and I'm sure Virgo doesn't mind it as well. But the problem is that because you do have this this mental side to yourself, if somebody is really out of alignment in terms of what you perceive to be, the way that you want to live, it can, strike a note of discord. It's not that in general that you're insecure if somebody is different than you, they have different ideas. You might actually feed off of that. But in terms of relationships, it can be um, not so hot. So just keep that in mind. Don't be too dismissive of how important that can be to your life as a whole. And also respect the fact that you are somebody who is intellectually curious and active. And if you had to be with somebody that you could not have sophisticated conversations with, it probably would feel like, absolute boredom. So don't make the mistake of thinking that it's going to be okay. You really do need that mental stimulation. And I think that in terms of commitment, you may be one of those people having Sag rising that you might tend to commit at a later date, maybe when you're in your 30s. But, there's always a possibility that you would do so earlier. If you have, the moon in a water sign, you may be more receptive to emotional nurturing by a partner and wanting to do that for a partner. If your moon is in Libra, definitely you might want relationship. And there are other things, sun in the seventh house or moon in the seventh house, things like that. So the bottom line is that you can have relationships with someone who is very interesting to you, that you feel that you can learn from them, they can learn from you. What sign is most compatible? I could never say that, but I would definitely say that you might attract fire signs or air signs based on your rising sign, and you might, depending on what else you have going on with your inner planets, Virgo, you might find that they are too rambunctious for you, or you want that more mellow, earthy type of individual, or maybe a water sign would be very compatible with you. So that's going to be something that is quite personal to each of you, depending on other factors. Okay, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, please check the link below. I'm at RainaMoonAstrology.com. Take care. Bye.